by afterlife, do you mean something like a ground of being, which is kind of the eternal life that undergirds what we might understand as the world in which life as such takes place? Since it seems to be, knowledge of the afterlife, for this true knowledge from which one recollects things. It
Mm,
seems to be
mm.
the, the 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 ground of being, intelligibility that undergirds knowledge of life for the living, and therefore that which is known. I would presume. Is that the case? Or you mean something else?
Is life after death presupposed by life before death?
You could ask that. Well, yeah. Well, that's tricky, right? I mean, what life before death is there, or
I
life
mean,
before life
I mean
even?
the ordinary life, yeah.
Hmm.
Does it not
Yes.
presuppose its dwelling already in its end? No?
Uh, do you mean end in a temporary sense or like in a teleological
Both,
sense?
both, both.
Both.
I mean,
Is
is
those two being together, is that simply necessary, or would that be a result of a specific act of reasoning?
the telos and the temporary, you're asking?
Yes. In
I've written on the question of time in another article in Vogelin, and okay, what we ordinarily today consider as future is something that, you know, that is and has been molded by modernist, early modern teachings.
mhm, yes.
It is easy
Uh,
to confront ourselves with older writings, and you'll see that they betray an understanding of the future and the relation between the future and the past and the present, these the three realms, that doesn't coincide with our expectations, the expectations that we have developed uh, through our upbringing, and that we take for granted for the most part. We require, we need to make a great effort to transcend what we take for granted. Those are called prejudices for the most part, that shape our attitude, that shape also the way we read. That's another difficulty in reading the classics. We take certain things for granted in reading them. And whatever we take for granted is an obstacle to our understanding, to our listening, to our hearing, in fact, what the sources have to say. Now, is there something utterly novel in the future, substantially, significantly novel with respect to the past?
Not in this metaphysics, as you would say in modern terms. Ah,
Here
speaking
we
of
have
novelty.
uh, uh, synchronicity.
Indeed. Good evening, Paul.
Welcome, welcome to the party, Paul. Welcome. Now, Joachim was just asking about the the relationship between the afterlife and the future. Should we understand the afterlife in terms of the future, or in terms of perhaps something that has already been, that's already there, that has always been?
Yeah.
Or do you want to elaborate on that? I'm
Oh,
paraphrasing.
well, I presumed that it did mean actually both in some sense. If the former applies, then the latter also applies. But I
Yes.
wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that I wasn't just presuming that.
Yeah, yeah. And what I was just suggesting was that we're today, we are for the most part are taking for granted views that have been shaped by early modern thinkers. We're not aware of this because we haven't studied these sources that we have received and absorbed almost through osmosis, through our upbringing. So, to free ourselves from certain prejudices, we would need to make a great effort and think all of our presuppositions through and through. And that's very painful sometimes. Painstaking work is required. Now, I asked just now, before Paul, you came up, whether the future had something absolutely new, novel, to offer us that might transcend anything that was significant, that might transcend and somehow leave behind in that respect, overcome the past. And if we read the pagan classics earnestly, as children even, we can realize that the future plays a very little role in their, they're not very worried about the future, okay? You could say the prophetic, yeah, but it's not enough. Obviously there's prophecy. Because there is an orientation, yeah, towards something that has been always, we're bent upon recovering what is lost, what is hidden. So if there is something new that is important and significant, aside from trifles and mirror games, gossip is always new, of course. Novelties, yeah, newspapers, always something new. And at the same time, being so new suggests that it has no roots. And in that respect, there's nothing new about it. Like dust is always new, but it's always the same dust. So it's not significant. But if there's something significant that the future will bring, that is something that was not recognized, that was hidden in the past. And that's an attitude, by the way, that the early modern thinkers share with the ancients, although they take it somewhere else. If you look at Descartes, Klein has this work on mathematics of the ancient concept of arithmetic and so forth. He offers us a phenomenological history of the arithmos, what we call number in Greek. And at the end, he has a section on Descartes. And there he shows, I think quite convincingly, that Descartes and other mathematicians from the period saw themselves as recovering, as discovering something that had been lost in early antiquity. Perhaps, and understanding it better than, of course, than the ancients had understood it. And they're making something new with it. Sort of old ancient pearls that they dig out They rediscover them, and now for the first time they polish them, and they realize, ooh, you know what we could do with these things? We can make bombs with them. You know, it's sometimes they speak about, you know, they speak about, we know about the gunpowder, for example, that was used in earlier times, but it was not exploited for the purposes that were recognized by the moderns. And similarly with notions, insights into the nature of things. So, okay, that's a modern attitude. The early moderns take it somewhere else. The notion that there's nothing really new, right, that is real and significant, that is not to be discovered from within the it's not hidden already, you see. So all treasure. So the future does not give us anything substantially new with respect to the eternal. So here we go with the afterworld. Yeah. There is also a modernist reading of the Bible that suggests that yes, there will be at the end. The end will overcome, supersede the beginning. The Omega is not a restoration of the Alpha. It's going beyond it, a transcending of the Alpha. The Alpha, therefore, is not perfect. The Alpha, therefore, needs to be redeemed. And if it's not, it's not fully good. It's imperfect. It requires, perfecting.
Marco, is what you're talking about the so-called historical consciousness, which is, according to Strauss, a modification of the biblical attitude?
Yes, that is integral to the problem, a modification, because you have, of course, prophecy, you have eschatology in the Bible, but what is meant by that, and Strauss will stress, restoration, with his emphasis on teshuvah and repentance, return, turning back, metanoesis for the Greeks. There is a return to something that has been lost, and at least we're alienated from it. But we see this we see with the moderns.
With the Greeks, there's just eternity. There's just this constant eternity with its relative progress or regression. The situation remains. They don't have this the idea of an alpha and an omega, right? Wouldn't that be Strauss's point?
Well, it's funny that we speak about it in these terms because alpha and omega are Greek letters. And who are the Greeks? But now that being said, just let me see if I can address this a second very shortly, and then please do it.
No, take your time.
We're talking about paganism. So we're talking about anything that falls short of a revelation such as the biblical one. And if we say the Greeks, we would have to bring in the Romans, we'd have to bring in the ancient so-called Chinese. I say so-called because Chinese comes from Qin. Qin is a dynasty, and the earlier people did not think of themselves as the people of the Qin. What is more, there's a little tiny region that they go back to within this huge region that we now conceive and see as.
They discovered the Qin consciousness.
Yeah, whatever that. Okay, or the Indians. I mean, all these people. Yeah. Do they? And this is, I think, it's a typical way of considering them, the pagans. Are they lost in this this view, which is somewhat not quite propitious, according to which we have eternity, the immutable, and then we have the meaninglessness of life, that things come up and pop up and go back down and fall back into eternity. So life doesn't mean anything. No? It seems to me to be a stale caricature.
Well, it's not exactly that life doesn't mean anything. It's that
No significance, it's not going anywhere.
life has meaning for individuals. There's the idea of living well. Well, it's not going anywhere from a certain point of view, but you can. There's beauty in life, and you can live a beautiful life, and you can die well, and most of you can have virtues and so on. So it's not exactly just pointless.
There's not a collective progress. There's not a history of humankind, you could say, because
right. Except there is the idea that a society can develop the arts and in this sort of thing, except that it's not understood as some kind of fundamental difference. It's just an improvement. It's better, and it's something that can be raised up and maybe maintained, and then it's going to go down if it goes down.
Not necessarily, but it tends to. Yes, it tends to. If you have to make an effort, and it's very difficult to keep it up, given the fact that who knows what the next generation will do with it.
Right. So exactly, but still, that is a kind of gives some meaning to life, to contribute to those good things and leave good traces and so on. So it's not. I don't think it's quite fair to say that life just doesn't mean anything for the pagans. It has all those kinds of meanings.
But in the critique of paganism, I think, well, this is especially the case for the modern critique of paganism, which is clearly indebted to an early Christian critique of paganism. The problem with the pagans is that ultimately they're left with a kind of stoic attitude. Life is ultimately meaningless, and sure, I can cultivate virtue, but there is no cosmic telos, perhaps. I mean, you can think of Teilhard de Chardin. We're not going anywhere ultimately. We're manifestations, we disappear, and this doesn't help us as a collective.
Was that Teilhard de Chardin's attitude? That he went back to a kind of pagan perspective?
No. He's rejecting. I mean, this is what he would.
Oh, this is a criticism of paganism.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, whether it's more or less implicit or tacit, but the point is that he has this. He proposes this cosmic telos, and he is integrating.
But isn't it a materialist telos? That's I mean, he's sort of Christianizing paganism.
He's a modern. He tries to integrate.
To integrate science into the.
Well, no. As a matter of fact, Christianity into modern science.
Science. Yeah. It's sort of like proto Jordan Petersonism.
Well, it's what all sensible moderns do. This is the way you get it done, and sure enough, I mean, did it not work?
What were we going to say before, Joe?
Oh well, okay. So I see very much in this treatment of what did the pagans think, their stoic attitude, whether they believed that there was anything in the new that could supersede the old in any way. And I recently was introduced to Hesiod, the Theogonia,
was discussed briefly between some of my friends, and I was struck by this conspiracy on the part of Ge and Kronos against Uranos. That from what was explained, Uranos is kind of the heaven, let's say, this stable,
The sky
intelligent.
god.
The sky. Okay, sky daddy. Fine, fine, fine. Well, all right. Right. So heaven. So the stable, the intelligible, let's say, form that interacts with matter in some way, but doesn't want to generate because it's right. It doesn't want to be changed. It doesn't want to be superseded by the children. And then one of the children removes this phallus that's blocking the uterus of Ge, right? So there is some suggestion that time,
Gaia. Yeah.
yeah, that the time um, can change form in some way, and that then, of course, or am I getting things mixed up? Does this add up so far? Am I getting gods mixed up here, or
Well,
was it?
I don't think so. You're talking
Yeah.
about
Yes. Well, all right. So there is that, but that doesn't mean therefore progress. There is a process of, at the very least, a change from the rule of let's say Kronos to the rule of Zeus, which has a kind of, I mean, it's illegal. It features men. It has cities. It has techne, let's say, and there is that. But from there, it doesn't follow that there is,
but
let's say, unlimited progress that man can consummate into through techne. There is
the thing about those kinds of explanations, those sorts of cosmologies,
yes.
is that in a way that they're presented as histories, but it seems to me that more essentially they're a kind of metaphysical explanation that
Yes, certainly, and
that reveals a structure, and it's not really to be understood as
no,
a history.
no, but
That
I'm working from within the story now, where
Mhm.
we can abstract to the principles once it's. I mean, I'm sort of doing that in between already, but just from how the story goes, you see that it goes from this to this, and but then right. So there broadly, let's say, okay, if we're going to abstract the principles, there's this metaphysics gets, let's say, put into this image, this drama, these gods being at each other's throats, and from there doesn't happen much to the effect of providence. Let's say Zeus is is as good as you get, and it doesn't take you far beyond a city and farming, and
Yeah, I mean, but again, let me try to put it another way. The story reveals an underlying structure.
mm-hmm.
So it's sort of an explanation to how we go from what the Greeks saw, these vast cosmic forces,
Mm-hmm.
These lights in the sky and earthquakes and oceans and
Mm-hmm.
mountains, and how you go from this. And obviously, in one way or another, man is a product of these cosmic forces, which an alert consciousness perceives as godlike, gigantic. So it's more how could why aren't we just engulfed in fire and chaos?
Yeah. Right. No, certainly. I see that. I don't think there's anything about my account of it that goes against that.
No, it just
Very much
it's
presupposes
I don't think you can call it a history or development
Oh no,
in the same sense that the Bible presents itself.
oh no, I meant more of a development within the story, right? You see this. This is how it gets told. That's all I mean.
Yeah.
When I
Well,
use the word
I would
process,
see
you
it
might have.
more as explaining the underlying layers.
Yeah,
of
no,
present
definitely.
reality.
But by way of this
Yeah.
fairy tale that
Yeah.
has a beginning and an end.
Yeah.
You see.
Well, nevertheless, what the Bible is standing on and how we are to understand the Bible, especially the Hebrew Bible, is a big question. And I think Strauss, for one, tried to awaken this question in his readers. We're familiar, I think, with the notion that, look, for the pagans, men love the gods because the gods are superior. The gods are not loving men. They don't care for them.
They don't even love the gods.
But this is a parody, of course. But this is obviously a parody. It's a parody. And it's a sign of the fact that there's a parody is the croppings that the medieval manuscripts have of the original of De Natura Deorum, on the nature of the gods by Cicero. You see, actually, the whole section on providence has been cut out. They didn't keep it for us. It was too irksome. Now, what would have been the problem for these monks? That Cicero's denial of providence? Obviously not. It would have fed into the official discourse. But what if he had said things about providence that would have struck him as maybe Christian, or as posing a problem for their understanding of Christianity? Okay, is there providence? And this is Platonism. Plato is clear, yeah, in his formal suggestions. The dialogue suggests that there is such a thing as providence. In the Muthoi and all these stories that he's telling, they suggest that there's providence. Okay. Now, why providence? Well, I mean, this is really the whole point, because if it is simply a matter of the structure, and then we live our lives, there's an alienation. There's an abyss between the two, right? Our lives and then the structure. You know, Hegel will play on that and he'll say, I'm going to resolve particularly in the universal.
A rediscovery of the human mind.
So the history of Geist, of mind, will show that, yes, at the beginning there were these people who were lost in this this ignorance, really, of self-ignorance. Mm-hmm. And then,
but Marco, in all of Greek literature and mythology, the gods are always intervening with men. So isn't that a kind of providence? I mean,
yes, but the sense that what we're taught is that these were the stories of the gods, and that there are the stories of that you'll find in the American Indian tribes. You know, you'll find in the early dynasties of Japan and Amaterasu and whatnot. So you have the stories that try to account for the phenomena, for the present, but there is this huge gap between the present and the realm of these fairies, of these ghosts, of these gods, of whatever extraordinary creatures might have ever existed. In India, right? Indra and Prajapati, all these, okay, the gods, wonderful.
Please don't start naming them all.
Huh?
Please don't start naming them all.
Ah, okay, yes, there's millions of them. So that's the realm of the imaginary. Okay, you know that there are these hidden eternal entities that are somehow responsible for what is going on here, but they're not entering in such a way that that what is here is of critical importance.
Yes.
It's the play. I mean, and this on this reading, Christianity is a special innovation. What is happening here is of pivotal importance. It changes everything. God enters. God, the God of gods, enters. The God of the Bible, the God of Abraham, enters. Projects it empties himself out canonically into this world of death as valley of tears, and then redeems it. This redemption of the valley of tears is not a pagan thing. This is clear.
Yeah.
But how do we understand that intervention? That remains, I think, for a philosopher, remains an open question. Certainly, the significance of it transcends our ordinary expectations.
Yeah. It's
As you know, as I put it in some of my publications, is Christianity overcoming paganism, or is it fulfilling it, as it were, by vindicating what is best, what is forgotten about paganism?
What about paganism?
What is best and forgotten about paganism?
And that would be science?
No, the subject for another conference.
He's luring us in.
Huh?
He's luring us in. He already knows the answer. Luring us in.
Science? No, I mean science, Scientia, sapientia. I mean, you could say, what? Well, I've suggested, that it is a question of a way of life. In fact, is it vindicating the justice of, for example, I put it in these terms at some point, the justice of the Socratic life, showing that it is well grounded.
Well, but so you think that Christianity might be doing this?
Well, it would have done that, and would have been that in the eyes of Virtue, who was, as you know, an early prophet of Christianity. So the early Christians admired the man in whose eyes Christianity would have been that, precisely that, and justified as that, and acceptable as that. How should I put it? But only as that. Not as overcoming what he understood quite well as being the best way of life for a man, as man, the proper way of life.
Well, all right.
But
Marco,
as vindicating it.
We're getting another approach to your thinking here, but haven't we got? I mean, isn't the urgent problem the wreck of Christianity?
There are another grounds on which the faith is taught to be needful of being made acceptable again. But they're certainly, they don't account for the best of the pagan world. That's for sure.
What do you mean?
Oh well, let's say niceness, in offensiveness.
Oh, just post-Christian virtue.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's the wreck. That's what I'm calling the wreck
Yeah,
of
that is the
Christianity.
wreck, yes.
Hmm.
I'd say yeah.
Have we adequately understood Christianity? How do we adequately understand Christianity if we don't adequately understand the pagans?
Hmm.
And in fact, the two pillars of Christianity is, keep in mind the last judgment of the Sistine Chapel. We have on one side, in the paradise, we have the two poles, right? Which again, as I mentioned in the conference, is a kind of summary of the Dante's comedy. I mean, the Michelangelo's work. So on top, you have on one side you have the noble Hebrews, and on the other side you have the pagans. These two elements, have we adequately understood them? We cannot adequately understand Christianity without adequately understanding the two poles distinctly, without confusing them. And then how do you adequately understand the Hebrews if you don't adequately understand their beginnings? So the Bereshit, what is it? What is meant by the beginning? Is it simply the birth as a seed that develops into something better? I mean, what are you going to do with a seed? I'd rather have a fruit than a seed, right?
Mm.
Is it just a seed that they have there? Is that all? What is meant by the beginning? Is it concealing something intentionally? Is the author or the authors of the Bereshit, what we call the Genesis, concealing something for the sake of introducing us to what is being concealed? As you know, Paul Strauss worked hard on Maimonides, and the sense that you clearly want to show what is important, but pearls to pigs, you don't want people to trample over what you're saying. You don't want it to be vulgarized. You don't want it to be disparaged and finally thrown away. You want it to be heard. You want to have care for the future generations. But here I have a treasure to bestow, to communicate. I better keep it in a temple, as it were. Better shrouded, package it up. So,
which is, yeah, the tabernacle. Let's say,
huh?
The Mishkan, the tabernacle, was built that way. It appears.
Yes. So, likewise for messages, what is the beginning? In the beginning, is shrouded in mystery, clearly. But why? Is it an act of deception or is it a pedagogical act? So perhaps the rest of the Bible is helping us return to the meaning of that beginning. The heading, the head,
Mm-hmm.
the mind. The mind of the Bible is in the beginning. And then it's unfolding so that in an act of condescension, unfolding so that we could rise back to the beginning, to the mind. So Strauss's emphasis on the omega never being more. Now, would Virgil, would even Plato have welcomed Christianity in that sense? And I have argued more or less indirectly through the study of certain authors that is the case. I can't see you anymore, Paul. Are you in the dark?
Yeah, I'm in the dark. In
Shrouded.
what sense? In the sense that the that the Bible reveals the beginning?
No, that is something that they would have argued against, in the sense that, if anything, it reveals it in the act of concealing it. Noli me tangere. Yeah. It seems to reveal it. This is the same argument that Strauss has for Maimonides. Maimonides was raised and educated to understand that certain things you just don't speak to in publications. You don't publish them. You don't put them in writing.
Yeah,
and yet he seems to do it. And yet Strauss is stressing the fact that in the very act, he says, well, at certain points, it might just be a good idea. You might be forced to say certain things. It's a justified thing. Okay. You want to say, but at the same time, he conceals them.
The esoteric and the exoteric message.
How do we understand those? So now let us not underestimate, not too much anyway, what Strauss is up to. He is writing for people who normally could care less about Maimonides, and yet he's saying something about Maimonides that is pertinent to pagan readings of Christianity, sympathetic readings of Christianity, readings on account of which Christianity is fully makes sense, okay? Justified. Readings on account of which Christianity doesn't really reveal what wasn't revealed earlier. It seems to reveal it. And again, Christianity is, you could say, it was Jews who came to Rome. These Jews who came to Rome seem to have revealed what had never been revealed before. But in the act of revealing it, they conceal it, perhaps even further.
A red herring, let's say.
Giambattista Vico, by the way, who wrote the Principi di Scienza Nuova, as a new commedia, a new comedy by Dante, and who shows very delicate ways that Dante's Commedia is a new Platonic Politeia, New Republic. He makes it clear to those who have ears to hear that in his earlier works, he had said what he had to say, but that he seems to be saying more, to exposing something new in his so-called Scienza Nuova, new science, which inverts the terms of Galileo's Nuova Scienza, by the way. Galileo, whom he's very we would say in modern terms, very critical of. Now, in the Scienza Nuova, it looks like he's exposing everything.
Yes, generation.
And at the same time, it is a work that baffles and has baffled many people because there's when you start scratching the surface, you don't know what in the world he's talking about, and that's why many of the 18th century, 19th century, especially 19th century commentators or readers, erudite readers, ended up with the conclusion that the guy didn't know what he was talking about. He was an eccentric reader of everything who was just giving us a fruit salad, word salad.
He gives it right to him, like, oh, I fell on my head, and then I became a genius. But
do you say that just as a joke, or also literally?
Oh, I don't know. I've never studied them directly. I've only read some of the
No, because in his autobiography, he says that he fell on his head. And he has a kind of an intriguing, I don't know you want to call a rehearsal of the fall of man in pagan terms. Because he had gone up the ladder. He had gone up the ladder. His father was a poor man who had a bookstore, and he had gone up that ladder to fetch a book.
I see.
Wise wisdom, and he had fallen, and he fell on his head. He cracked his head, but there was not on the outside. It was only there was an hemorrhage, sort of bleeding inside, internal. And then the doctor comes along, and he tells everyone he's gonna either die or remain completely mindless for the rest of his life. And that didn't happen. And that was a kind of miracle. But he sort of stopped himself. He's saying that the mind stops itself as it is ready to grasp itself. And it does not, it's not trying to do that. It's not trying to grasp itself. But okay, so Vico there again, he is saying really that he had to show, he had to place himself on the level of these beastly readers, these troglodytes, censors, etc., pretending to show something new, wonderful, whereas in reality, he tells you in the arguments that there's nothing significant new here. I am simply vindicating.
I see. So you're saying that quirky introduction is a kind of summary, kind of microcosm of what happens in the later work, which is to say, within the work he doesn't grab that book.
That's the autobiography. So for scholars of Vico, it's a famous passage where he said. Incidentally, I had a very lengthy article once published in an Italian journal, giving a kind of anatomy of the first section of the autobiography, where I'm going through essentially every single word, as if it were a very small poem. But he works. This is how he writes, and good authors are that way. You have to read them in the original. There are word games, plays on words, and the puns all over the place, and they're up to something important. And to discover that, you really have to dig, and I give cross references to his other works, but just to show what he is suggesting. So all authors. So to get back to Christianity, is that how Christianity is to be understood, or is it to be understood as something offering us really something completely new? The God gave himself for the first time, and the Hebrew tradition was sort of a preface to Christianity. Perhaps it is for a Jew who would say, however, that what comes after the preface is a supreme vindication of what came before. So at some point it is necessary, it is desirable, highly desirable, to have a supreme vindication of what was defenseless, essentially defenseless in earlier times. Is that defense of the earlier life, is that defense superseding the earlier life? And they would say, no.
Oh.
But there are those who say, yes, it does. And so now, all of a sudden, philosophy is less important. We have the revelation. What's the point? We can use it as a tool, but it's we don't have to struggle that much because we already have it. We have it all. In that sense, they would not accept that kind of Christianity. Okay. Well, so the afterlife, is it going to give us something that is extraordinary? And now, the fact that it doesn't give us something extraordinarily new the fact that Christianity is not that it's not giving us something substantially, essentially new with respect to what's always been, does that suggest that there is no, that, that we have to be disappointed? And oh boy, you know, perhaps we could have, especially Taylor would be extremely disappointed, of course, because the whole chaos of the cosmos unfolding, it's this beautiful flower, and we can, the mind of God even revealing itself to us. And wow, that, no, all of a sudden that's deflated, and poof, the balloon pops. And no, that's not what this is all about. Life. So I might have mentioned this to you, Paul, in one of our early conversations on that I once gave a conference in Italy on Oriental religion and Christianity. And if we want to have a summary, reduced to very few terms, the distinction between Christianity as specifically as it is understood by us and the ancients, we could say that for the ancients, the hidden is more important than the revealed. For us, the revealed is more important than the hidden.
Mm-hmm.
That has something to do with paganism, what we call polytheism.
I missed that. The revealed is more important for who?
For the moderns and the modern Christianity. And there is a tendency in earlier Christianity, and this, I think, is a kernel of the debate between good pagans, smart pagans, and Christians. These who are, of course, new Jews, so to speak. The tension pertaining precisely to this issue is Christianity revealing the hidden, is the hidden emptying itself into the revelation? Yes, perhaps. Certainly it is. It is to be held somehow. There's a link between the two, the revelation and the hidden source. But clearly, there's a resurrection. It goes back. So there are two distinct readings of Christianity here. Is Christianity revealing the hidden in the sense that the hidden is exhausting itself in the revelation? Or, so the revelation being that being is fully itself when it's revealed, insofar as it's revealed. Or is revelation ultimately, at best, a supreme vindication, even self-vindication? Self-vindication.
Self what?
Self-vindication of the hidden. The hidden is vindicating itself by revealing something.
And remaining hidden.
And remaining hidden with respect to itself, yeah? So the revelation is ultimately a pointer back.
That's a great reformulation and of my first question, really, or rather a complete, well, kind of answer, but also a reformulation. It's the issue at hand.
Do we seek an answer that quenches, satisfies the question, or does the supreme answer revive the question? Does it feed back into the question?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if the hidden were to have exhausted itself, would there be a discussion?
Huh?
Would there have been a discussion if it had been the former case?
If it had been, please, a little bit, my old ears.
Oh, would there have been this discussion if the hidden had exhausted, if the Omega had
I am.
superseded?
I
You
am.
know, this is. I mean, this is. In
Yes,
some,
but you know, it is in Hegelian terms that
that's where I was going to go next.
it would suggest that we're at a stage where of enlightenment now, where we can enjoy the banquet of the gods. Yeah, now we can all feast together, and so yes, we can continue, but on a higher level. We can continue discussing, but now we're in the light, whereas before we were in the dark. That's the answer.
But then I mean, you get the last. Then you get a couple centuries after Hegel. Like, well, I mean, does it apply?
Okay, then it happened. So then the good old Hegelians, just as the good old Marxists, will say, well, you know, it didn't happen, but we tried. Well, we should try again.
But Marco, I mean, I don't know much about this, but wouldn't the ultimate thing for Hegel, this age of light in which we're living, wouldn't Hegel,
he wants to live in.
What that we're supposedly living in, whatever.
Oh, we failed. He could acknowledge that we failed.
Well, okay, but doesn't it consist in a situation of the highest rationality and the highest justice? And if that's the case,
it's a realm. It's a realm of, in Marx's term, the realm of freedom. Yeah, it is now you enter it. So everything has been the essential has.
But a realm of freedom.
Awakening.
A realm of freedom because of the intelligence and the justice reaching its highest degree. But what I'm trying to get at is, if that's the case, if that's what the Hegelian light is, does it even address the questions that you're raising? I mean, okay, and you know,
clearly,
rationality.
it is. You know, it is not Hegel who is speaking. It is Geist who is speaking in Hegel. So, for Hegel, the goal is the conversion of the hidden into the revealed. The conversion that does not begin with us as puny little creatures, but we're part of it, of course. It begins from the hidden itself, the sources and the resources of the hidden, the abyss that is now finding its way to emptying itself into a revelatory state, as it were. So being is at its fullest when it's revealed. And there in this time of revelation, now being is still working with us, it's still using us to bring us into the light so that we may all share in this light that has been revealed. Does this sound a little bit like versions of Christianity? Yeah. The pagans.
Except that he's talking about rationality and justice, which are not exactly Christian values.
Okay, but they integrate it, and because he tries to, as many Protestants too, tries to take into account the Jewish critic, let's call it critique of Christianity, reevaluate the status of the law and political things. So he's trying to bring that out more. But he wants all the beautiful virtues of Christianity just integrated in a solid structure, political structure, or quasi-political, I should say, universal. Yeah? So there's going to be law, justice, wonderful, beautiful things, and yes, the various virtues, all integrated within this this Welt, the Welt that is the Geist, really, and we're all participating in the banquet of the spirit, of the mind. Now, will there be some who are left behind? But yeah, maybe, you know. But then there's, you know, within the order of the hierarchy, the whole has revealed itself, and now it will simply, how should we put it, bloom.
But ultimately,
Potentially.
ultimately, I mean, doesn't this indicate a kind of materialist triumph?
Materialist?
I mean, Hegel isn't Marx, but yes, because it's sort of he's incorporating the beautiful Christian virtues into this down to earth thing. You know, this political system which is going to become a whole. It seems to me like I mean, I don't know much about it.
It is not understood as a mere material thing.
No,
Consider the notion of consider
course not.
biology. It is not just matter. For him, these what we call matter is simply a rudimentary manifestation of being.
Right.
And being is trying to manifest itself fully through man.
Yeah. But
the devotional
in human creations, through human creations. But when we look at what we have achieved, we say, well, wow, we could have never done something like this as these creeps that we are, these wretched creeps that we are. Something else must be at work in our creations, something of a divine order. And so, yes, there is Geist that has been working through us all along. And now, what is it trying to get to? Now, the ancients would agree, by the way, incidentally, to some extent there, because, you know, how in the world can we have order here with all these creeps, all these devils that are running around pretending to be civilized? How is that possible? Can vice be responsible for fear, and vice be responsible for this beautiful architecture and so forth? And the
yes,
laws.
it could if it had but sense.
Eh?
If it was sensible, it could. Yes.
Censored?
If it were sensible.
Sensible.
The Kant joke.
Yeah, okay. Yes. So something must be at work there. Yeah, something providential. So he recovers providence. Again, how does he do that? That's a different story. But he does recover, and so he'll say, you know, all this wonderful stuff. You know, Germany is whatever, Prussia. It's all, you know, the rationality that you're speaking about. It's not just the material. It's just but wait, it's a working. It's this stuff, sure, but it betrays the presence of being. And what's the point of this being? And this is Hegel in the whole point of his working with us and through us is to fulfill itself. Being is fulfilling itself by using us and by reconciling us with itself. So, beautiful stuff. Wow, if you start digging, you know, you start pulling out some worms, but here and there. But and of course, you'll see that he won't mind saying, you know, this does that sound like Christianity? Yeah, you bet. But in fact, this is better because I'm bringing out what Christianity was just about to say, and I've said it. Or rather, Geist has said it in me. And so we have all this
hate the player, hate the game.
Eh?
Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Hate the game. Yes, well, I mean, that's it's not our fault.
I mean, it's great, and now we all know it.
So, okay, so the afterlife, is it really about appearances? And so I spoke about extravaganzas, where we are, by and large, incapable of conceiving of anything important in terms of what is hidden. It's got to be outward. We live in a society that is really compelled systematically to seek the revealed, the exposure in all things, and also the surface, really. So we live in, of course, in very superficial times, times of gossip, times of information, times where everything is new and everything that is not new is not important.
Say, how do you see that as it is apparently coexisting and to some sense correlating with kind of the Tanshang, let's say, in which the hidden is never expressing itself to any extent, even as being hidden. You know, let's say Darwin, it's all just coming and coming and coming and coming and coming, and whether you can go back to the beginning to any extent, we don't know. You don't have to. Perhaps we mustn't. Perhaps that's where the connection lies. That the what is being revealed fully is perhaps the human will, perhaps to participate in this ever changing world. You see what I mean?
Ergo question?
Hmm?
Question? What you...
A question. Well, so how you frame it is that in modernity there is no attention to hidden as hidden. The emphasis on what is revealed. But what seems to be the case now is that yes, that is coming to great fruition politically, but it is also correlating with a sort of, as it were, a kind of view in which nothing is ever revealed.
Ah, okay, yes.
Because it's bloody.
This
ongoing.
is the dark side of modernity. Modernity seems to have to let everything out, right? So there's the bright side, and then as several scholars have worked to show, there's a dark side of modernity. So there's that which is a bit in a quite extreme ways, a bit what happens with it's almost a caricature, right? With the Nazi regime. There's a bright side. There's the Leni Riefenstahl triumph of the will. There's the guy who had these wonderful Christmas parties. I recall a witness. He was telling us about his having survived throughout those years by pretending to be a Christian German. And he had a girlfriend who was the daughter to a major military fellow, whatever he was, whatever his title was. And on Christmas Eve, probably, or Christmas night, probably, so you had this beautiful Christmas tree in the girlfriend's home, the dining area. Everybody's ready to have dinner. They're waiting for the pater familias, who comes in with his coat, and he's snowing outside, very cold, and he comes to table for Christmas supper. For all you know, they recited their prayers, and he tells people, he excuses himself because of the delay. He had been taken by urgent matters. They had to finish burning 300 Jews. They were left, and they had to. And he gets into a few details, and the guy is who's pretending to be there, as a so-called Christian, is can hardly contain himself, and he runs outside. And he's so hot. He said he remembered he was so hot inside that as he brought the snow to his face, it wouldn't feel cold. So we have the bright side and the dark side. Dr. Jekyll, Jekyll, and of course Mr. Hyde. So the whole modern monstrosity is there. You have the shiny part, and then you have the slaves who work for the pyramid. Yeah. You have the darks. What do you call it? The dark web, or the deep dark web.
Yeah. Well, there's the dark web. There's the deep
dark web, where they have
thing.
the trade of of flesh, weapons, and drugs, and whatever.
Yeah.
So, and okay, well, as you can hear, children.
Scaring the children.
Not mine, not mine.
And then-
Some people. I hope so. So, yeah, that's where we find ourselves in. And now, so the hidden is still there. Now, as an author once pointed out, the moderns have not succeeded in overcoming the hidden. They have simply convinced us that what is hidden is absurd instead of so it's the absurdity that is hidden as opposed to a mystery, divine mystery. That's the result of this this machinery. It has not eliminated the hidden. It has simply turned it into garbage.
Don't worry about it.
Doesn't. And as Strauss pointed out, we have not overcome the problems. We have simply confused ourselves with respect to we have crippled our minds, our mores, so that we're no longer capable of thinking about of turning even back to the problems.
Yeah, but we've done that by debasing the language, and the language has been debased. But
also, yes,
you know, that's just how they've done it. But they've done it in order to exactly what you're saying, in order to turn. Well, talk about the hidden, but there's also the past, all the ancient values and everything to unseat that with the idea that they're making way for the light.
Yes. Revelation.
Does that relate directly to what you're saying?
Being in its fullest, at its fullest, in its fullness, is revealed being.
And so that anything that we're dragging along
should be dragged further into the light.
Well, it has to be gotten rid of. I mean, for instance, old attitudes.
I know, dragged into the light, exposed to the extent that as they were.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, okay. As they were in the past. Okay, they might have served.
Their evil. Yeah.
Their inadequacy. Today, they would be preposterous. They would be inauthentic. They would not be authentic. To be authentic is to be in the light of revealed being.
Right.
And to move in that direction.
That's the great accusation, for instance, against traditional painting, that it's invalid because it's inauthentic, and it's inauthentic because it's not of now.
Yes, now being, however, you have to unpack that. What's special about now? Yeah.
Well, yeah, but then, I mean, I'm trying to get into your thinking. So traditional painting.
It's not my thinking. It's this guy's to his thinking in me.
Yeah, well, you're not going to unpack that. So
the idea would be then, so the traditional painting. The problem is that there's a secret in it, that it's hiding something, that unrevealed thing you're talking about.
And it is, as in literature, it is not seeking to descend onto our level, the minimum common denominator, as it were, but it's seeking to raise us to its level. So it requires an effort on the part of the listener for music, the viewer, of the reader. It requires an effort, participation. So it condescends to our level. It attracts us with some flowers. But by the way, in Dante's, in an article, I showed that what Dante is suggesting is that classical poetry was inferior to Christian poetry in terms of honey. Christian poetry gives us more honey, more flower, more sweet stuff, you know. But the sweet stuff is not an end in itself. You see, it's just a way to lure us back to what the classical poetry was talking about.
There's also the problem of mastering the traditional arts, because the contemporary arts don't require mastery; they only require authenticity.
There's a lot of work that is needed, but as it turns out, it has a lot to do with marketing. So arts.
You mean for contemporary art?
Yes. So it turns out that most of your time and effort is to be devoted to
absolutely, but you know, but that's
advertisement and showing, because it's all about showing. And advertisement is in a way related to the consummation of art.
Right. There's nothing but promotion. I mean, that's what it all is. But
promotion is art. The art of promotion, self-promotion.
Yes. But I'm talking about the effort to master the traditional arts.
Yeah, but that's kind of it's pointless.
No. Now you're talking about how it's seen now. I'm talking about how it actually is. How it
yes, but that's passé.
But yes.
What's the point in making an effort? What's the point in making an effort?
But, yes, absolutely. But what I'm trying to relate this particular question to what you're talking to your ideas about the hidden and revealing the hidden and the beginning, which is obscured. And so wouldn't the problem of the mastery of the arts, like the mastery of anything else, relate to the idea of there being something that's hidden?
Yeah, I wouldn't say the mastery of anything else, because because as it should be clear, the ancients were not trying to master the foundation of the arts. They were mastering their trades, not the foundation, the natural foundation of the trades. Yeah. Okay. Not the conditions of possibility for the mastery.
Well, okay, but
this is strictly related to this point problem.
The problem of mastering anything implies a situation where you don't master the thing. And when you don't master the thing, you don't know there's something hidden.
Yes. Well, keeping in mind again that the modern as such is seeking an ulterior mastery. And that mastery is directly relevant to our discussion. In order to master nature, it must be nature that wants you to master it. And so at some point or other, you must recognize that I can master nature because it is nature that is mastering itself through me.
Yeah, it's like this business that we have to take charge of our evolutionary development by manipulating our DNA the way Eric Weinstein
was. Yes, you could say that.
That too is it's a kind of providence. We have the power to do it. We must do it now. It'll work out.
It'll be okay.
Well, I mean, you can't say that, or else people won't.
But I mean, they feel. Who is it? Is it Eric Weinstein or Brett Weinstein who wants to do this? They say that our survival depends on it. That we've reached a certain stage where if we don't take charge of our DNA and evolve ourselves,
we're lost. We're lost. But what if we die? You say our survival, but so be it.
Is that not to nature? Yes, I've asked it often.
So be it. But they're suggesting that our survival is everything. Our survival is the point where we show ourselves. But what if we don't survive? We'll go back into hiding. And so be it.
Do we not most show ourselves when we die? It's worth asking.
I mean, what is this? What is the point of the survival? Is it survival for the sake of greater survival? Or is it, again, is it pointing backward, as it were? Huh?